Hey y'all. I am so sorry. I'm a few minutes late. Um whew, girl, you know what I cannot stand? When people set a time to do something and you plan your entire day around it and then they don't show up. So that's what I'm dealing with this morning. So I'm going to check my setup and then we're going to get started. All right? All right, y'all. I think we're good to go. We're good to go. So let me make sure I can see the chat so I don't miss anyone. But I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for a few days. It's been on my mind for a few days. So I'm just going to talk about it. So you have a lot of people saying that Black women divest for resources, right? And they say this like it's a problematic thing. So I want to talk about it. And as you guys come into the chat, or if you catch the playback, maybe you can give your thoughts. Okay? I'm gonna give it another second for the notification to go out. And then we'll get going. I think because what I've noticed even with myself, like it takes a minute for me to get the notification on my other channel. But we'll just get going. So, some things I've seen in a few comment sections and heard in a few conversations is that, oh, this whole divestment movement is simply about Black women wanting resources. And so Black women are quote unquote abandoning Black men in search of wealth. Here's the thing, right? For the most part, it's generally understood that if a man wants to attract his ideal woman, he has to be able to provide for her. That's number one. Secondly, it's understood that generally speaking, when there's a group of people who are dealing with certain issues, whether they're social or economic issues, that generally the fight is handled by the men of that group. It's usually not the woman's responsibility to kind of be on the front lines of any types of fights or social movements. And when you see these situations where you see non-Black women protesting about things, they tend to be backed by a system that supports them. Hey, Black Rose. With Black women, throughout history, the situation that we've kind of been in is we have to be on the front lines as kind of the foot soldiers of a lot of the social movements that impact Black women. Not to say that other people have not been on the front lines, but we don't have the leisure of kind of sitting back and allowing the fight to be fought for us. We have to be on the front lines. And then what happens is, whether you're talking about the mainstream civil rights movement, you're talking about the Black Panther movement, whether you're talking about, the early women's rights movements, when we help these other people get the rights that they want, when we say, well, there are certain things that we're dealing with as Black women and we need our issues to be addressed, it's a problem. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a problem for us to say there are unique experiences that we have, being that we are positioned in this world as women who are Black or Black people who are women. And so y'all are going to have to help us be noted and recognized as well. Then it's the problem. And then you have people who say that Black women are viewed as strong and independent and quote unquote masculine because we're always at the front lines of these movements, right? People say, well, maybe men would want you if you knew how to step back a little bit, if you weren't so aggressive, you weren't so masculine. But then if you're a Black woman and you are soft spoken, you're seen as maybe someone who has a less aggressive personality, people make fun of you for that. So then when you say, well, you know what, I'm not going to put myself in this situation where I'm on the front lines of these movements. I'm not going to put myself in the situation where I put myself at risk and there's nothing in place to protect me, then it's a problem. Then people say, well, you're only doing this for resources. Hey, Tassie. The same people who say this, hey, Delphia, understand that when they pursue other groups of women, they know that their money has to be right. Their appearance has to be appealing. They have to be in a position to provide. They understand that when it comes to other groups of women. But then when you have Black women who say, well, you know what? We want to deal with men who will marry us, men who will be in the position to provide for us. We can work if we want to. Hey, Nyla Moon, we can work if we want to. We can contribute to the household if we want to, but you don't have to. You're not the one financing the situation. You're not going to lose everything you got if you're in a situation where you can't work because you have a man that has married you who is able to run the household financially with or without you. You know, these things are understood when it comes to other groups of women, and even these guys that talk about getting Black women from other parts of the world, they understand, okay? If you get a Black woman from certain parts of Africa, from the Caribbean, from South America, Central America, you understand her family's not going to accept you if you're not able to provide for her, if you're not able to improve her situation. I appreciate that, Nyla. Thank you for coming in. It's like people understand, these men, these Black men on YouTube understand, if you're going to deal with another group of women, you have to prove that you can improve that woman's situation. But see, the problem is that you're dealing with a collective, A, that doesn't value Black women, and then B, if we're honest, as a collective of women, we don't see ourselves as being worth the things that other women just naturally expect. So I've seen Black women say, oh, they're divesting because they want resources and they want to be taken care of. Why is that a bad thing? Okay? Why is it a bad thing to say, yes, I have skills and I have certain abilities and I work. I have money. I save my money or I contributed to the household. But if I didn't work, I would still be taken care of. Why is that a bad thing? And why are we as Black women conditioned to think that there is something wrong with us for expecting what is normally associated with womanhood and femininity? You do realize you can go on dates and not have to pay anything. You can live with a man or be married to a man and not have to be in a situation where you are the sole provider or the primary provider. You can combine your finances with a man in a way where you can still have your own bank account. And you can use that to do the things that you like. You can use that to plan for vacations, right? You can use that to be in a situation where the man in your household is the head of household, which includes financial responsibility. See, you're dealing with men and women sometimes who allow the men to do it, but you're dealing with men who they want the benefits and all the other positives that come with being leaders, but they don't want the responsibilities. Hey, hyper fanatic. Leadership comes with responsibility. If you're the head of the household, you're financially responsible for that household. You're responsible to provide. Now, again, that doesn't mean that as a woman you can't work and you can't contribute if that's what you want to do, right? But I'm just saying that it's okay to be in a situation where you don't have to do that. And it doesn't make you an evil person. It doesn't make you a terrible person. It doesn't mean that something is wrong with you for expecting that. Exactly, Delphia. If you're a woman and you're the primary provider, then the man that's with you is not an alpha. Yep, Black Rose. Selfish, an agent, or a sellout when you don't want to deal with the struggle. But the same men that will say that about you know that if they want even a decent woman of another race, that they have to be able to provide and they have to be able to deal with the responsibility that comes with leadership. And the Black women who would tell you that you're wrong for having certain expectations will then turn around and support Black men who provide all of those things for non-Black women. And then they'll look at you and say, well, if you don't want to be the front lines of all of the issues that Black people deal with, then something is wrong with you. You're leaving for resources. You're not leaving for your peace of mind, right? You're not leaving so that you don't have to deal with the stress-related health issues that a lot of Black women deal with. No, you're quote-unquote selfish because you want the same basic things that other women expect. Hey, Femme Fatale. I like that username. Mm-hmm. You know, people just, it's frustrating to me because I have acquaintances across racial lines. Oh, LD, is that London? Okay. So what is it? What time is it there now? 4 or 5 o'clock? That's cool. You have, like, my acquaintances from other races, like, stuff like this is not even a conversation. It's not even a conversation. It's the men of those groups understand. You know, having a wife or even a woman that you live with, right? Because in parts of the Western world, and it's not just in the US, but marriage is on the decline. But they understand if you want a woman in your life, part of what comes with that is being in a situation where you can handle the responsibilities that come with leadership. These people want to call themselves alphas, right? And then will literally complain about paying for a date. Literally complain about paying for a date. And they won't plan for, like, say a guy doesn't want to pay for a date or doesn't want to spend a lot of money. There are a lot of cutesy romantic things that you can do for a first date and not have to spend a lot of money, but they don't want to plan that. It's like they feel like women, particularly Black women, should prove ourselves to Black men, but it's like, okay, you're the one who is saying that you're the alpha and you want to be the head of somebody's household. What is alpha about being too cheap to show that you have the ability to provide financially? See, people are like, oh, why do men have to pay for this and they have to pay for that? Well, if you're trying to be the alpha, if you're trying to be the head of the household, you have to show that you have the ability to improve that woman's situation. You have to show that you have the ability to support a wife and children, to financially take care of a household. And where you're too cheap to pay for dates, it makes me think, okay, you're not in the position to run a household. You're not qualified to be someone's husband. You're not qualified to have a wife and children, because you're always going to have unexpected expenses in a marriage, in a household, and definitely dealing with children. So if you don't want to pay $5 for a date, $100 for a date, then you're not qualified to be somebody's husband. You aren't qualified to be a father. Okay? Yes, Tassie. Leaving because we want to function and operate as women. Very true, Femme Fatale. Resources pay the bills. Exactly, Black Rose. Who doesn't want access to resources? All of these places in the world where certain segments of Black people idolize, right? Like all these places where they say, oh, the Black people are in polygamous relationships. Guess what? The women are staying at home and tending to the household, and the men are financially providing. And even in those societies, if you look at some of the documentaries, those men will tell you, some of those men will straight up tell you they can't afford more than one wife. Why? Because they have to have the ability to provide for whoever is in their household. But you have these people looking at it like, oh yeah, you can be polygamous and you can legally sleep with more than one woman. Okay, but you got to be able to afford every woman that's in your house. And a lot of these dudes, they can't afford one woman. They're complaining about child support. So they can't even afford to take care of the children that they have. But they want to add more women and more children to it, and you can't handle one woman. Exactly, Femme Fatale. Hypergamy is standard procedure. Standard procedure. Okay? Up until very recent history, if you were not able to financially provide for a woman, you didn't get women. You didn't have sexual access to women, and you did not have access to a wife. Period. You know, in a lot of these societies where you see people and they have these ceremonies where they're kind of like ritualistic mating ceremonies. And you may see certain families bringing, they may have to bring a certain amount of cattle, goats. They may have to provide jewelry. Do you understand that they're doing that to show that they have the ability to provide for the woman that they're trying to marry? So it's like, look, I have all this cattle. I have all these goats. I have all this jewelry. So if you let your daughter marry me, I'm in the position to provide for her and whatever children we have. Very true. Femme Fatale, kids are very expensive. Yep, Delphia, if he's not an alpha, he'd have to cook at home. Men are driven by sex and doing the pursuing. That's very true, Femme Fatale. Hey, 10th man. Oh, it's 6:25 in Germany. Okay. So early evening there, probably right after work for most people. Yes, Femme Fatale. It's understood in other societies, and even in this society in the past, that if you were broke, you weren't going to have access to even average women. Okay? Yep, femme fatale. That's very true. We have minimal economic power, and men of other races have built legacies. Very true. Very, very, very true. And it's unfortunate that you have so many Black women and then so many Black girls being raised to think that it's normal to not expect the benefits that come along with womanhood. Do you understand the way? Let me tell y'all something. The way that a lot of these men expect to have children without providing for them financially and without marrying the mother is not accepted in other societies and was not accepted by Black people in the US prior to 40 or 50 years ago. No children, no sexual access, period, if you weren't in the position to marry the woman and provide for her and those children. Okay? Right, the Netflix and chill, coffee dates. Uh, it's it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous that that's what the men think, and it's ridiculous that there's so many Black women who accept that. You know? And again, I go back to when men really want to be with the woman, they know what time it is. They know how to provide for you. They know how to treat you well, take you on nice dates. They know how to marry you and how to be faithful to you and how to provide for you and your children. Okay? Or any children that you have together. Men know these things. So when they're not willing to do it for you, it means they don't like you enough to do that for you. They don't like you enough to do that for you. But then you get mad when you see them do that for other races of women when that's not something that you have required them to do. But then when you see a group of Black women saying, well, no, we require the same basic level of respect that other women get, then you say, oh, you're leaving for resources. Okay, so let me know when we get to the part of the conversation where it's supposed to be a bad thing or something wrong. Okay? Let me know when we get to the part of the conversation where you're telling me something that I'm doing that's not a basic expectation of other groups of women. Okay? A lot of your acquaintances, a lot of your women friends who are acquaintances of other races, all right? Let me tell you something. A lot of them don't even know when the bills are due in their household. Why? Because everything is handled. Let me tell you something. One of my white coworkers, she straight up told me one day, she doesn't know our paydays. The money goes into a joint account. She has a separate account to do the stuff she likes to do, you know, her haircuts, her nails, and stuff like that. And there are women across the world, and this is just standard procedure. So these men who talk about wanting Asian women and Middle Eastern women, honey, standard operating procedure for the women in those parts of the world who are at least middle class. Parts of Africa, the Caribbean, South America, Central America. Same thing when you're dealing with Black women. They go get a European woman from certain parts of Europe. It's the same thing. And they understand that. These men understand that. Okay? Yes. The educated lames are usually ones who date out at 10 times the rate and marry out at 3 times the rate of black women. And you're right, the stats simply aren't in our favor, femme fatale. Very true about the domestic violence rates as well. Hey, Mariah, and you're right, they are hypocrites. Yes, Delphia, that's a good point. If you don't believe in sex before marriage, you're old-fashioned and a prude. And a lot of these same men will say that they only want to marry a woman who's a virgin or a woman who hasn't had a lot of partners. And then for women who sleep with rich men for money, it's an evil thing. But then if you sleep with broke dudes, they say, well, this is an indicator that this is all that you can get. I'm telling you, these guys don't know what they want. Okay, 10th man, you're driving home from work. Okay, we won't tell anybody. It'll be our secret. It'll be our secret that you're leaving a few minutes early. I get it. Yes, Mariah, my white coworker is married to a white man. And literally, straight up said she doesn't pay attention to when we get paid. She doesn't know when we get paid. She doesn't know when the bills come in, when they're due. She just knows when she comes home, when it comes to the kids, everything is handled. She never has to worry about it. Yes, femme fatale, we are dying slowly. Yes, Mariah, these men who talk about Asian women don't know what they're talking about. Because they definitely practice hypergamy, and it's just understood. Women from other parts of the world only deal with Western men because they want to practice hypergamy. Okay? And it's the same thing with women in the Caribbean and from, South America who deal with men from the US and Canada. They're doing it because they want to tap into those resources. And these black men who are telling other black men, oh, you can go to other parts of the world and find other women. It's like, okay, but you're tapping into a pool of women who are only dealing with you because they want to practice hypergamy. That's a good point, femme fatale. We're basically vagina to them. And that's why they think they don't have to do the basic. All right? Yeah, Mariah Ingram, a lot of educated lames. Listen, I don't advocate black women dealing with men who have been in and out of jail and stuff like that, because that's a whole nother set of problems. A lot of educated lames dealt with something that a lot of people deal with growing up, right? A lot of people in middle school and maybe even high school are funny looking, right? We all go through that funny looking, awkward phase around puberty and just when you're coming out of it. So you deal with that phase where you look funny or ugly, okay? And then a lot of us grow into our looks, or we learn how to present ourselves in a way where we look our best. And so that's why sometimes people have a better time with dating maybe when they're in their early 20s and older, because by that age, we've grown into our looks and we know the best way to present ourselves. And so we can go out and we can date and we can have a good time and we can pull who we want to pull. And that's pretty much an educated lane. A person who grew up funny looking, potentially looking like a nerd, and they become an adult and they grow into themselves. But the difference with the educated lame is they don't understand that that's what a lot of people deal with. And so they never get over whatever hangups they had from that funny looking phase. That's true, femme fatale. A lot of us have been conditioned to coddle black men. Yeah, they like foreign women because their money goes further until those women start to have expectations, and then it's a problem. But it's like, okay, you're dealing with women, even though they might be poorer than we are in the Western world, you're dealing with women where if they married a man from their culture, right, the women would be in the household, tending to household things, and the man is the one who goes out and works and makes the money. And if the women do make money, you do see some of those societies where women may, like, you know, work at those open air markets where they cook for tourists or they make jewelry and other items for tourists. But those are still things that tend to be associated with homemaking. But in terms of who's going to get out into the world and be dealing with the hustle and bustle of a regular 9-to-5 job in a lot of those societies, like I said, even though they're poorer than we are, in a lot of those societies, the expectation is the man is the one that does that. So when you pluck a woman out of one of those places and you bring them to the Western world and they realize, okay, this is a man with access to more money, they're going to expect you to do the same thing. And some of those women come from places where culturally it's not socially acceptable for people to do a whole lot of sleeping around outside of marriage. Okay. So I don't understand what these guys are thinking. That's true, Mariah. White and Asian women don't care about being called gold diggers, especially Asian women. Yep, femme fatale, you're right. They don't compare themselves to other races of men, which is what they should be doing. Their imaginary unicorn status does not reflect on their character values or six-figure salaries. That's very true. And then even what some of them view as a high salary is not really a lot of money in comparison to what people make when they're tapping into the real money. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, for some people, making $80,000 or $90,000 a year is nothing. And they don't view you as really starting to make money until you tap into $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. Because you can go broke off of $90,000 or even $100,000 a year. You can have a bad year or make a few bad financial decisions and go broke off $80,000 a year. There are parts of this country where making $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year is still not enough to afford a house. So with a lot of these guys who are calling themselves educated lames, they're not doing what they think they're doing. Yes, hyperfanatic. A lot of foreign women do practice hypergamy. That's a good point, Mariah. A lot of educated lames are predators and potential abusers. Because anytime you're dealing with men who have repressed emotions and insecurity, that's a possibility. I think so too, hyperfanatic. I think that they are pretty much no different than the Pookies and Ray Rays. The only difference is maybe they haven't been to jail and they have access to better jobs, perhaps because of their education decisions. But I know a whole lot of so-called educated lames who have a couple baby mamas. They don't believe in marriage. They have a couple women that they're rotating between. So in a lot of ways, they're no different. Very true, 10th man. For a lot of women, it's natural to want to deal with a man who has the ability to provide. I'll say it that way. Yeah, hyperfanatic. I do think a lot of them are unstable. That's a good point, Mariah. And femme fatale, you both said that there are men who practice hypergamy, and that's very true. You hear these men talking about how, oh, women are making their own money now. women are making their own money. Okay. Why does that mean something to you as a man if you're saying that women's educations don't matter? You're laughing at Black women who have education and money. So why do you then turn around and pay attention to how much money some women make? So I just wanted to talk about this for a few minutes and to let people understand that for many Black women, divestment is not about resources. It's about being self first. It's about thinking of your needs as an individual and not putting yourself on the line for a collective that really doesn't value or care about you. And B, for some women in general, relationships and marriage are partially about being able to improve your situation. And so there are some of us who would tell you, okay, you think Black women divest for resources, so why is that a problem? If you're calling yourself an alpha, why is it a problem for you to provide for a woman? Okay? So no, we don't only divest for resources, but I can't speak for every divested Black woman, obviously, but I personally don't encourage Black women to deal with broke men. Point blank and period. Okay? Don't deal with broke men because you don't want to be like Jill Scott and Mary J. Blige and probably Wendy Williams and get in a divorce and you have to be the one to pay. All right? And think about how horrible, like in the case of Beyonce and Jay-Z, think about how horrible Beyonce would feel, right? As pretty as, she's pretty to me. She's a pretty woman. She's a millionaire, to the tune of maybe being worth almost $400 million. And you get with the guy who's generally viewed as unattractive, right? It's one thing to be cheated on by an unattractive dude, okay? But imagine dealing with the guy that's ugly, you gave him a chance, and he's broke, and he cheats on you? No. It was probably a little bit easier for her to forgive him because of how much money he's worth. Jeff Bezos just went through a divorce, and his wife got something like 30-some billion dollars. I'm sure that divorce is very painful, but it's probably a little bit easier to deal with when you walk away from the marriage being worth over $30 billion. Okay? Because after all that time being with a man, you don't want to walk away with nothing. Or, because in most situations, women outlive men. We tend to have a little bit of a longer lifespan. So say you're with a man all these years, you've loved him and cared for him, and he dies, right? And you have to go broke to pay for his funeral because you didn't deal with someone who had life insurance or someone who cared enough about you to want to make sure that you would be taken care of whether they're here or not. You realize how many Black women go through that? Where they've been with a man a long time and they got to go broke to bury him? Or they've been with him for a long time. Because I've seen people do this too. Maybe they're married, but when they retire, the guy wants to collect the highest amount of pension that he can. So in order for him to do that, he has to collect his pension benefit in a way where he doesn't leave anything to his wife. An idiot agrees to it. And, there's a little waiver form that you sign and have notarized where you say, oh, I understand that I'm not going to get a survivor's pension benefit. So idiot agrees to it, and then he dies. And then you realize, I can't afford to maintain this lifestyle without his income. And he didn't have any life insurance. So you're a woman in your 60s or 70s that has to completely change your lifestyle because you didn't require a man to care enough about you to want to provide for you in the event that he dies before you. A lot of us don't have these conversations, and I think we should. Okay? But anywho, I will talk to you guys soon. I gotta run out to the grocery store. I gotta get some food. I'm gonna try to talk my husband into making some stuff on the grill tonight. So I'm gonna try to make sure I have everything I need. But I'm gonna try to come on a little bit later this afternoon. Thank you all for joining me in the chat. If you enjoyed the conversation, please make sure that you like the video. Or hey, if you didn't like it, you can give a thumbs down too, because user ratings help either way. And make sure you're subscribed so that you get all the notifications and all that good stuff. Hey, Black Becky. Make sure you get all the notifications and all that stuff. And I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good afternoon.